Hi, my name is Michelle, and on behalf of Group 14, I will be reviewing the presentation regarding environmental impacts of disappearing honeybees in relation to colony collapse disorder, with a focus on pesticides as a potential cause. In 2006, beekeepers began to notice a swift decline in the amount of honeybees in their colonies. Bees began to disappear with no indication of disease, infestation, or cause at all. They simply left and failed to return to their hives. The loss of honeybees has become a global epidemic. So what's the problem? Colony collapse disorder, or the disappearance of honeybees, will have a negative environmental, occupational, and economical impact if it is not remedied. With the loss of hives, beekeepers will experience a loss of income. The cost of honeybee pollination services will rise, resulting in increased costs that would ultimately be passed on to consumers through higher food costs. Farmers will experience reduced crop yields, resulting in the need to use greater acreage and more resources in crop production. Food availability may be reduced as bees are vitally important in the production of fruit, vegetables, and seed crops. The disappearance of honeybees is also concerning because bees are what is known as an indicator species, meaning the declining bee population may be indicative of the overall decline in the health of our environment. This presentation will review and define colony collapse disorder, which I may also refer to as CCD. It will discuss the main suspected causes with an emphasis on pesticide exposure. It will explain why honeybees matter and how health, environmental, and economical problematic potentials could arise from CCD. We will also address challenges and solutions to consider in future research and development, as well as policy implications in relation to pesticide control. The CCD is defined as a dead colony with no adult bees or dead bee bodies, but with a live queen, usually honey, and immature bees still present. No specific cause has been pinpointed for colony collapse disorder. This graph gives us a good numerical insight into how the bee colonies in the United States have been affected. As we can see, the percent loss over the winter in the past decade has remained in the 20 to 30% range, consistently exceeding the acceptable level loss. The Bee-Informed Organization also created a map depicting the states affected, and the wide range of loss contributes more to the question of what is causing CCD. The causes of colony collapse disorder are still under investigation and are not very well understood. Currently, any realistic and conceivable cause is a possibility, and most scientists agree that there is no single cause for CCD. Nevertheless, there are potential and leading etiological factors that can make us be more or less sure of their contributions to CCD. And as new information becomes available, new causes are added and others may be dismissed as potential causes. We will discuss pesticides, especially neonicotinoids, in more detail than other causes due to their highly suggestive impact on CCD. The other causes are not enumerated in any specific order due to the lack of sufficient knowledge confirming the priority one above another. Neonicotinoids are systemic insecticides known to cause harm to honeybees and suggested as a potential main cause for CCD. These toxicants accumulate and persist in soil for years. They are water-soluble and exist in treated plants from seed to harvest. There are two subclasses of neonicotinoids, nitroguanidines and cyanoamidines. Nitroguanidines are highly toxic and cause acute effects, while cyanoamidines cause a less acutely toxic effect. There is a possible synergism of insecticides with other agrochemicals. For example, DMI fungicides have the ability to interact with other insecticides to cause harmful effects on honeybees. These fungicides increase the toxicity of acetamiprid and thiacloprid as much as 224 times. Pesticide impact. Acute toxicity is an acute exposure to pesticides on bees that can have a range of effects like general agitation, wing paralysis, uncoordinated movements, and arching of the abdomen that is similar to sting reflex. Sublethal toxicity is what happens when pesticides amounts are too little to kill the bees, yet they can still disrupt the cognitive abilities, communications, behaviors, and physiology of the bees. The chronic and cumulative effect results when neonicotinoids bind to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the insect's brains and accumulate over time. This accumulation tends to have grave effects on bees and can result in paralysis and death. Habitat effects affects and reduces forage. Many chemicals beekeepers use to keep the bees healthy and productive are suspected to have sublethal effects. The routine colony management that beekeepers perform, like hive splitting and swarm control, are other factors that add to the worsening of CCD. Migratory beekeeping is when beekeepers rent their hives to farmers for pollination. This may affect the orientation of bees to their hives, which is very vital. Transportation for long miles result in stress on bees and may contribute to the spreading of bee diseases to new areas. Lack of genetic diversity is related to the queen source quality that lacks biodiversity, which makes the bees more susceptible to any disease or pest invading the colony. Although a consensus on genetically modified crops is lacking, it has been theorized that insecticides coated on seeds before planting may actually appear later in the plant's nectar and pollen. Scientists propose that the cause nutritional fitness became malnutrition is a stressor to bees and causes weakness in the immune system. Little information exists currently to support this claim. Traditional bee diseases are suggested as potential exacerbating factors, but not likely to be responsible for causing CCD. Varroa mites are parasites and are the most destructive killer of honeybees, and can also transmit viruses. Yet many colonies that showed symptoms of CCD may actually have their Varroa mite population under control. It is suggested that new and unidentified diseases may cause CCD, especially if newly introduced. An example of that is the new microsporidian species, Nosema ceranae, that cause the affected honeybees to abandon their colonies. Another example is the Israeli acute paralysis virus that is the newly discovered and may play a role in causing CCD. The chain reaction due to climate change causing erratic weather patterns and environmental changes is also thought to contribute to CCD, as well as electromagnetic radiation. It's been suggested, but its validity has been disputed. Finally, many scientists believe that CCD is caused by the interaction of a combination of many factors, and this is referred to as a synergism of all causes. Bees, along with butterflies and other insects, are the major sources of plant and crop pollinators around the world. This section will focus on why bees are important as they relate to the United States. Bees create genetic diversity among plants and crops through a process called cross-pollination, which will be explained later. Finally, letting bees do the work for us creates significant financial advantages. From an agricultural perspective, bees pollinate close to 1/3 of the crops in the United States. Interestingly, almonds completely rely on pollination by bees. Crops like alfalfa are used in feed for livestock, so it's easy to see how bees influence more than just the plants themselves. And of course, honey. Next, bees have significant effects on biodiversity among flowering plants. They are extremely important cross-pollinators, and this is a good thing because it prevents inbreeding, which makes plants more susceptible to pests. Industrial agriculture has this problem, and they combat it with pesticides. Cross-pollination by bees creates hybrids and allow for the possibility of adaptation, and this is important if the goal is to get away from relying on pesticides. This illustration demonstrates the process of cross-pollination, which according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, is the transfer of pollen from an anther of a flower of one plant to a stigma of a flower from another plant of the same species. Finally, bees are responsible for pollinating close to $15 billion worth of food and $150 million worth of honey per year. There are alternatives for crop pollination if the bees disappear, but they are significantly more expensive. One is hand pollination, which is exactly what it sounds like. Alternatively, there is mechanical pollination, which involves large farm vehicles or planes, and those methods are expected to cost $300 more per acre. You can imagine that these costs will be passed on to the consumer, resulting in higher food prices. So we've known about the disappearance of honeybees for some time, so what is currently being done about it? In May of 2015, the Obama administration developed a national strategy to promote the health of honeybees and contribute to the National Strategy to Promote the Health of Honeybees and Other Pollinators strategy. The Pollinator Health Task is a task force that was appointed to tackle and reduce the impact of multiple stressors on pollinator health and focus largely on increasing and improving pollinator habitats. The initiative includes pollinator public education and outreach, a research action plan, developing public and private partnerships, implementing federal land management, and protecting pollinators from being exposed to pesticides. According to the USDA website, the best action the public can take to improve honeybee survival is to not use pesticides during midday hours when honeybees are most likely to be out foraging for nectar and pollen of flowering plants. In addition, communities can plant pollinator-friendly plants. And these plants are good sources of nectar and pollen, and they include red clover, foxglove, bee balm, Joe pipeweed, and along with other native plants. Lastly, you can support companies that support bee research and breeding programs. Another viable solution toward increasing the bee population is implementing programs that teach and train urban residents to become amateur beekeepers. Many cities are now offering startup assistance to a growing number of hobbyists for all ages interested in beekeeping. Plus, educating urban populations about plant diversity and municipal gardens will enhance both bee habitats and bee health. In order to maintain colony health, beekeepers are advised to monitor for varroa mites and to use approved pesticides according to package instructions when needed to keep colonies well nourished, including making sure of forage availability or providing supplemental feeding, and to follow regional best practices. Colonies and equipment exposed to colony collapse disorder should not be combined or used for healthy bee colonies. Future research should focus on continued investigation of potential causes of colony collapse disorder. Targets should include increasing the scale of studies and utilizing consistent sampling and data collection methods in order to produce long-term datasets that are comparable and potentially aggregatable. Studies should be conducted in the field instead of under experimental conditions. And these are a few of the challenges of studying the causes of CCD. The focus of policy research should include an investigation of the impact of bee importation policies to include weighing the impact of greater genetic diversity, which could increase population-level resiliency against the danger of pathogen introduction. Further approval of pesticides by the EPA should require the submission of a scientifically rigorous study with complete data documenting effects of its use prior to pesticide approval. As the study to support the approval of the neonicotinoid and clothianidin did not meet these suggested guidelines, a moratorium on its use is suggested until complete information about impact is available. Now is the time for research into the cause and treatment of colony collapse disorder. This will conclude our presentation, and we hope you have found it interesting and informative.